The marketplace was never silent. Even at dawn, when the mist still clung to the earth like a shroud, the sound of iron against stone echoed through the square, chains scraping, voices shouting, the low hum of dread vibrating through the air. The scent of smoke and sweat drifted beneath the blood-red sky, thick enough to choke on. Somewhere beyond the wooden platforms, a woman stood with her wrists bound and her head bowed. Her name was Lyria, once a proud omega of the Silver Moon Pack, now nothing more than a ghost in human skin. Her hair was matted with dust, her lips cracked from thirst, and yet her eyes still burned with something fierce and fragile. The crowd called her cursed. They whispered it the way people whispered of storms, something wild, something better left alone. The auction master barked orders, his voice rough as sandpaper. The condemned were lined up like broken tools, criminals, deserters, thieves, shifters stripped of their pride. Each one waited for the clang of the iron bell that decided who would live and who would not. Lyria kept her head down. Every breath she took was an act of defiance. For months, she'd been hunted like a beast for a crime that wasn't a crime at all, saving a human child from her own pack's wrath. They called it betrayal. They tore away her title, burned her name from their records, and left her to die in the wild. But she hadn't died. Not yet. She had wandered from one border to the next, running from bounty hunters, feeding on scraps, her wolf locked deep inside, silent and weak. But even silence had a pulse. Somewhere beneath her ribs, the old fire flickered, a silver light that refused to go out. Now, as the guards pushed her forward toward the wooden stage, that light stirred again. The air shifted. Clouds thickened. The wind began to howl as though the heavens themselves were mourning. A storm was coming, and every soul in that market felt it in their bones. The auction master's voice rose above the noise, announcing her as Lot 47, an Omega shifter, unmarked, defiant. The crowd jeered. Someone threw a piece of rotten fruit that splattered against her cheek. She didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than humiliation. And yet, deep inside, her heart pounded. Not from fear, but from the memory of what it once meant to be free. The first crack of thunder tore across the sky as the whip struck her back. Pain flared through her body like fire, sharp and clean. She gasped but did not cry out. The whip came again, and again, each lash a reminder that mercy did not live here. But then, she felt it. A gaze. Through the blur of rain and dust, her eyes locked onto someone in the crowd. A boy, barely 10, trembling behind a merchant's cart, his face pale as marble. His clothes were too fine for this place. He didn't belong. His fear was pure, untainted by cruelty, and in that heartbeat, something inside her cracked open. The instinct hit her first, the kind only wolves knew. Protect. Her hands twitched against the chains. The silver flame under her skin pulsed once, twice, stronger than before. She could almost feel her wolf pushing at the edges of her cage, snarling, begging to be freed. Then chaos erupted. Bandits stormed the square from every corner, their blades flashing in the light of the burning torches. Screams rose as merchants scattered and guards fell. The boy cried out, stumbling backward as a man lunged for him. Lyria moved before she could think. Her body slammed against the guard holding her leash. The chain snapped, slicing her palms. She hit the ground hard, rolled, grabbed the broken links, and swung. The metal caught a bandit across the jaw with a sickening crack. She felt the heat of her own blood running down her arms, but she didn't stop. The boy screamed again. Lyria's eyes blazed silver. She threw herself through the chaos, kicking up dirt and fury. The smell of smoke mixed with rain, and somewhere behind her, the old whipmaster shouted for her to be killed. But she was done being their prey. She caught the bandit's wrist just as his blade came down. Her fingers burned against his skin. The silver flame burst from her palms, small but deadly. The man's eyes widened in horror as light consumed him. He fell without a sound. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The crowd froze. The rain hung in the air. The boy stared at her as though seeing a miracle. Lyria's breath came in ragged gasps. Her knees trembled, her body shaking under the weight of what she'd just done. She hadn't called on her power in years, not since the day her pack turned on her. And yet, it had answered her. The storm broke then, full and furious. Lightning tore the sky apart. People screamed and ran. The marketplace dissolved into madness. But all Lyria could see was that small boy, still standing there, eyes wide, tears streaking his face. She reached for him. "Run," she shouted. But before he could move, a bandit grabbed him from behind. The boy kicked and screamed, his small hands clawing at the air. Lyria didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She was already moving, sprinting through the rain, her feet pounding against the mud. Her chains clattered behind her like metal wings. The ground trembled as thunder rolled across the valley. Her body hurt. Her lungs burned. But there was only one thought in her mind: he cannot die here. Every lash she'd endured, every insult, every scar, they all funneled into that single moment. Into that one leap, when she threw herself between the boy and the blade. The knife grazed her side. She didn't feel it. She only heard the boy's sobs as she pulled him close, shielding him with her body. She turned, grabbed a fallen spear, and drove it through the attacker's chest. The man dropped, lifeless. And then there was silence again, thick, unreal silence. Lyria looked around. The rain was falling harder now, washing blood from her skin. Smoke rose from the stalls, the air heavy with loss. But the boy was safe. He was breathing. She knelt beside him, brushing the wet hair from his face. His eyes, deep brown, frightened, and too familiar, searched hers. Something about him tugged at her memory, something she couldn't name. But before she could ask his name, a new sound cut through the storm: hoofbeats. Heavy, fast, relentless. A dark figure rode through the smoke, cutting down the remaining bandits with terrifying precision. His presence changed the air itself, commanding, magnetic, dangerous. The horse reared, and the man leapt down, his cloak whipping in the wind. His eyes caught the light, golden, wolfish. For the briefest moment, Lyria forgot how to breathe. He moved with the kind of authority that didn't need to be spoken. Every motion told a story, of power, of scars, of battles fought in silence. His gaze swept the wreckage, then landed on her. He froze. Lightning illuminated his face, sharp and beautiful in the cruel way of predators. He looked at her as if he'd seen a ghost. "Lyria," he said softly, almost like a memory. The way he said her name made her chest tighten. No one had spoken it with gentleness in years. But she didn't know him. She would have remembered eyes like that. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "You shouldn't exist." The boy ran to him, clutching his leg. The man's expression changed: shock, relief, something darker hidden beneath. He looked between the child and Lyria, as though piecing together something impossible. Lyria rose slowly, blood dripping from her side, her breath ragged. She didn't speak. Didn't ask questions. Because deep down, she already felt it. The way the storm had found her. The way the fire had awakened in her veins. The way this man looked at her, not as a stranger, but as if fate had drawn a circle around them long ago. Something ancient was stirring. The silver flame in her heart burned brighter, humming with recognition and danger. She could feel her wolf pressing against her skin, whispering warnings she couldn't understand. The man took a step closer. His eyes softened for just a second, and she saw the truth hiding there: grief, longing, and something that looked like fear. Then the soldiers appeared behind him, shouting her name. And for the first time, Lyria realized she hadn't escaped. She had stepped straight into the center of her destiny. She stood taller, bloodied but unbroken, her hair clinging to her face. The boy hid behind the man's cloak, trembling. Lyria met the man's golden gaze and whispered to herself, "Not again." Because she knew what came next: chains, judgment, fire. She'd lived this before. But the voice inside her, the one that had slept for years, spoke now. Not this time. The thunder cracked one last time, and lightning struck the iron post beside her, shattering it. The chains at her wrists fell apart, glowing faintly with silver light. The crowd gasped. Even the soldiers stepped back. She didn't move, didn't run. She only looked at the man before her, this stranger who knew her name, this alpha whose eyes carried storms, and whispered, "Tell them I'm no one's prisoner." And for the first time, he smiled, not with joy, but with the weight of knowing what that meant. Because deep down, both of them understood. This was how legends began. Before we dive into the fire of destiny, don't forget to subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections, where every story burns with heart, fury, and forbidden love. Rain soaked the ground until it turned to mud, thick and red like spilled blood. The air was filled with the chaos of 1,000 voices, screams, steel, thunder, and the desperate cry of survival. The marketplace was no longer a place of trade, it was a battleground. The scent of smoke and wet earth clung to every breath, and through it all, Lyria moved with the wild grace of someone who had nothing left to lose. Her chains were gone, her pulse a hammer in her chest. She fought with bare hands and instinct. Each strike came from muscle memory buried deep in her bones. She ducked, twisted, caught the arm of a man swinging at her and drove her elbow into his throat. The sound he made was brief, human, and then nothing. Her body burned, but her mind was quiet. It was the strange calm that comes when death feels close enough to taste. The boy's scream cut through the noise again, sharp and terrified, dragging her back from the edge. He was being pulled through the chaos by a bandit twice her size, the man's hand knotted in his hair. Lyria's wolf surged forward. She didn't think, she only moved. The world narrowed to the distance between them. Every step sank deep into mud, her breath short, her body aching, but she ran anyway. She hit the bandit hard, driving him to the ground. He cursed, swinging wildly, but she caught his wrist and twisted until bone snapped. He held, and she silenced him with a sharp crack to the skull. The boy stumbled free, trembling, his small hands shaking. She wanted to tell him to run, but the words never came. A blade caught her side before she saw it. The shock stole her breath. The steel cut deep, heat flooding her ribs. She turned and saw another man, older, grinning as he lifted his sword for the final blow. And then the air shifted. It was subtle at first, a hush that rolled through the chaos like a warning. The crowd's screams faltered. The bandits hesitated. Even the thunder seemed to pause. A shadow cut through the smoke. He came from the east gate, moving with a predatory grace that didn't belong to any man she'd ever seen. His armor was dark wolf hide, slick with rain and blood. Every motion was efficient, deliberate. His blade flashed silver, too fast to follow, cutting through the bandits with a quiet, terrifying precision. He didn't shout. He didn't speak. He simply moved, and the world moved with him. Lyria staggered, clutching her wound. The boy was behind her again, crying softly. She wanted to reach for him, to protect him, but her body trembled. The pain was sharp and cold. Then the man stopped. He stood in the center of the ruined square, his cloak torn, golden eyes burning through the rain. The light caught his face, strong lines, the faint scar across his jaw, the weight of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. Lyria met his gaze, and for a heartbeat, everything else disappeared. The world slowed. The noise fell away. All she could hear was the rhythm of her own heart and the low rumble of thunder above them. Those eyes, they weren't just looking at her. They were looking into her, as though peeling away every layer she'd tried to bury. He spoke her name like it belonged to him. Lyria of the Silver Moon. The sound of it was both accusation and recognition. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. It hit her like a memory she'd tried to forget, cutting through the fog of pain and exhaustion. Her mouth went dry. "How do you know that name?" But he didn't answer. He just stared at her, steady, unreadable, before saying words that made her stomach twist. "You shouldn't exist." The rain fell harder, blurring the world around them, but his voice carried clean through it. Lyria's throat tightened. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the storm, but something in the way he said it pinned her in place. There was no hatred in his tone, only confusion, disbelief, and something else. Regret. The boy moved behind him, clutching the man's cloak. The gesture was small, almost hidden, but Lyria saw it, the trust in it, the familiarity. And in that instant, she understood. This man wasn't one of the bandits. He was here for the boy. He turned his head slightly, checking the perimeter as soldiers poured in through the smoke, their armor glinting. Each one bore the sigil of the royal guard, an iron wolf carved into their chest plates. Lyria froze. Royal guard. That meant the boy was no common child. The man looked back at her once more, his expression unreadable. "You saved him," he said quietly. "You don't know what that means, do you?" She didn't. But she could feel it in his tone, the kind of weight that changes fates. Her body trembled from blood loss, but she forced herself to stand taller. "I don't need to know. He's a child. I did what anyone would have done." A faint shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Not anyone. Not here." He stepped closer, his presence filling the air around her. It wasn't just power, it was command, the kind that settled in the bones of those who served him. The kind that said this man had never once been denied. She could feel her pulse quicken, not from fear but from something deeper, an unspoken recognition that terrified her more than any sword. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, whispering warnings she didn't want to hear. His scent hit her then, clean rain, cedar, steel, and something faintly wild. It was intoxicating. Dangerous. The kind of scent that could unmake her. He stopped a few steps away, golden eyes scanning her from head to toe. "You're injured." Lyria laughed softly, bitter and tired. "You're observant." His jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to her defiance. Instead, he reached into his cloak, pulled a strip of cloth, and tossed it toward her. "You'll need that. Unless you plan to bleed out before I get my answers." She stared at the cloth, then at him. "You think I owe you answers?" "I think you owe someone," he said evenly. "And I intend to find out who." The soldiers behind him waited, restless. The boy clung tighter to his leg. Lyria looked at them all, their polished armor, their wary stares, and realized the absurdity of her situation. She was standing barefoot in the ruins of a market, covered in blood, chained moments ago, facing a man who commanded armies. And yet, she wasn't afraid. Because for the first time in years, her wolf wasn't silent. It was watching him. Studying him. Recognizing something ancient that tied their fates together long before either of them understood why. The air thickened between them, humming with tension neither could name. He finally broke the silence. "You shouldn't have interfered." "If I hadn't," she said quietly, "he'd be dead." He nodded once, slow. "And now, because of you, many will be." Lyria frowned, confusion and anger flashing across her face. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer right away. He looked past her, to the burning stalls, to the broken bodies, to the storm. His expression shifted, the mask cracking just enough to show the pain beneath it. "Finally," he said, "that boy you risked your life for, he's the Alpha King's son." The words hit like a blade. Lyria's breath caught in her throat. The world tilted. The Alpha King's son. The missing heir. She turned to the boy, seeing him differently now. The fine stitching of his torn clothes, the crest sewn into the hem, the ring around his neck. How had she missed it? Her chest tightened. "I didn't know." He nodded slowly. "I believe you. But the king won't." The soldiers shifted uneasily. One of them stepped forward. "Lord Kale, the boy needs to be taken to safety." Kale. So that was his name. It suited him, sharp, solid, commanding. He gave a short nod, but his eyes never left her. "We're taking her too." The soldier hesitated. "She's an outlaw." She saved the air. His tone made it clear there would be no argument. Lyria's voice was low but steady. I'm not going anywhere with you. Cale took a slow step forward, closing the space between them. His shadow fell across her, his presence overpowering. You don't have a choice, Omega. The word burned. He said it like a brand, a reminder of what she'd lost. But there was something else in his voice, something that sounded almost like respect. Lyria met his gaze, refusing to back down. I'm not one of your pack. A flicker of a smirk touched his mouth. No. You're something else entirely. He turned, signaling to the guards. Bind her wounds. Then move. As they approached, she stumbled back, clutching her side. The boy looked up at her with wide, pleading eyes. He didn't speak, but she saw the trust there, the same kind she'd seen in her own little brother before he died. And in that look, she made a choice. She let them take her. Not because she trusted Cale. Not because she feared him. But because she needed to know why. Why he knew her name. Why her power had returned. Why fate had dragged her into the orbit of the Alpha King's son. As they left the burning market behind, the storm began to fade. The wind softened. The rain slowed to a whisper. Lyria glanced back once at the wreckage, the bodies, the broken stalls, the place where she had almost died again. And she felt something strange. Not fear. Not regret. Hope. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't running anymore. She looked at Cale riding ahead of her, the boy in his arms, and she felt the pull of something powerful, something she didn't understand yet, but her wolf did. Fate. It was already moving, and she was caught in its current. She whispered to herself, so quietly the wind nearly took the words. Whatever this is, it's only beginning. The night settled like a shroud over the broken city. The rain had stopped, but its memory lingered in the smell of wet stone and rusted iron. The wind moved through the cracks of the old ruins, whispering secrets that hadn't been heard in centuries. They had ridden hard through the forest and across the outskirts of the ancient Colosseum until the world fell silent. Now, beneath that Colosseum, deep in the labyrinth of tunnels once carved by blood and battle, they rested. The catacombs were cold and alive with echoes. The walls breathed history, the stones were carved with the faces of forgotten kings and wolves that had once ruled the old world. Firelight flickered against them, making the carvings seem to move, shadows twisting into the shapes of beasts and ghosts. The air was thick with dust and the faint metallic tang of old blood. The boy slept near the fire, wrapped in a fur cloak too large for him. His breathing was steady, soft, innocent. Lyria sat a few feet away, her back pressed to a pillar carved with runes she half remembered from her childhood, symbols of the old moon gods, guardians of prophecy, fate, and ruin. Her wound had been bandaged. The pain was still there, sharp when she breathed, but she'd grown used to pain long ago. It was almost a comfort now, a reminder that she was still alive. Across from her, the man, Cale, sat in silence. His armor was discarded beside him, the wolf hide still wet from rain. He had washed the blood from his hands, but the smell lingered. He hadn't spoken much since they'd reached the tunnels. He didn't need to. His presence was a weight that filled the space. Lyria stared into the flames, the fire reflecting in her eyes. The silence stretched, long enough that she almost forgot what it was to speak. When her voice came, it was quiet, frayed at the edges. You said I shouldn't exist. Cale's gaze lifted slowly. His eyes caught the firelight, turning the gold in them molten. I did. She let the words hang there. Her fingers traced the rune at her side, a spiral of silver burned faintly into the stone. You're not the first to say it. He said nothing, only waited. His stillness was a weapon, he could drag truth from silence. Lyria's throat tightened. I wasn't always what I am now. I was born under the blood moon, same night the silver flame appeared in the sky. The elders said it was an omen, that a child born with its mark would bring change the packs weren't ready for. Kale's brow shifted slightly, the faintest motion. The silver flame, he murmured. A myth. She shook her head. It's not a myth. It burns inside the soul of one born under its light. My wolf carries it. The flames cracked between them. Lyria's eyes stayed fixed on them as she spoke. They tested me when I was 5. The mark appeared when I shifted for the first time. Silver eyes, silver aura. The pack was afraid. They said I was touched by something divine, or something cursed. Depends who you asked. Kale leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, voice low. Which did you believe? Lyria's lips trembled with a bitter smile. Back then, I thought maybe I was chosen. Later, I realized I was just different. And difference never survives in a pack built on fear. The memory rose unbidden, faces around a bonfire, the heat against her skin as elders chanted judgment, the cold of chains around her wrists. I was promised to the Beta's son, she continued. Terran. He was strong, proud, loyal to the pack above all else. We were supposed to unite 2 bloodlines. But when he saw the mark, he couldn't even look at me without disgust. Her voice cracked, and she swallowed hard. Then came the night of the sacrifice. A human child wandered into the valley, innocent, lost. They said he was a spy, an offering to the moon. I couldn't watch. I stopped them. I tore the altar apart with my bare hands. Kale's eyes darkened. You saved a human. I saved a child, she whispered. They called it betrayal. Said the silver flame had tainted my loyalty. They dragged me before the council, stripped me of my title, and cast me out. They burned the mark into my skin to remind me of what I'd done. Her fingers brushed the faint scar along her collarbone, a silvery brand that glowed faintly in the firelight. Since that night, I've been hunted. The prophecy frightened them. They said the one with the silver flame would bring the fall of Alarian bloodlines. So they tried to erase me. The room was silent except for the crackle of the fire and the soft rhythm of the boy's breathing. Kale's gaze never left her face. There was no pity in it, only understanding, heavy and sharp. You've been running a long time. She nodded slowly. Long enough that I stopped remembering what I was running from. He leaned back, his expression unreadable. And yet you risked everything for that boy. Lyria looked at the sleeping child. His face was soft in the glow, peaceful in a way that made her chest ache. Because I saw myself in him. Lost. Hunted. Alone. I couldn't watch it happen again. Kale's voice softened, just slightly. You don't know what saving him means. Her eyes flicked back to him. Then tell me. He hesitated, and for the first time, she saw the crack in his control. The faint flicker of conflict. He looked away, into the dark tunnel beyond the firelight. That boy is the heir to Dravenfell. The son of the Alpha King. The words hit harder than she expected, even though she'd guessed it. You said that before, she murmured. But what you didn't say was why he was taken. Kale's jaw tightened. Because power always comes for power. The border packs raided the capital 6 months ago. They took him to break the king's will. No one thought he survived. And now I've ruined that illusion, she said quietly. You've done more than that. He looked at her again, his eyes unreadable. You've tied yourself to the royal bloodline. The prophecy spoke of a silver flame that would burn the crowns of Dravenfell and raise a new order. You think the king will see you as a savior? Lyria's stomach twisted. He'll see me as the threat that prophecy warned of. Exactly. Silence fell again, heavy and suffocating. Lyria drew her knees to her chest, staring at the flickering flames. She thought of all the nights she'd hidden in caves, sleeping with one eye open. She thought of the faces of those she'd lost, of the bonds she'd been denied, of the life she'd never live. And now fate had dragged her into the center of a storm she never wanted. Her voice came out quieter than before. You could have left me there. Why didn't you? Kale's gaze dropped to the fire, his expression hardening again. Because I needed to see if it was true. What was? He looked up. The intensity in his eyes pinned her in place. The silver flame. Her breath caught. You don't believe in prophecies. No, he said. But I believe in power. And I saw what you did in that marketplace. The light that flared when you fought, it wasn't mortal. That kind of energy doesn't belong to chance. Lyria looked away, her hands trembling. It's a curse. Every time it wakes, something dies. Cale stood slowly, his shadow stretching tall across the wall. Maybe curses and prophecies are the same thing, just told from different sides. She didn't answer. He walked to one of the pillars, tracing the ancient runes carved into it. This place, he said softly, was built before the first packs formed. Before the bloodlines. They say wolves used to come here to face the truth within themselves. To either claim their power, or be devoured by it. Lyria watched him. And which one did you do? He turned, meeting her eyes. I'm still deciding. Something in his tone pulled at her. Beneath the steel of his voice, there was the echo of pain, old, hidden, heavy. You lost someone, she said. It wasn't a question. Cale didn't deny it. He looked toward the sleeping boy. His mother. Lyria's chest tightened. Was she? Human. The word came out like a stone. The king's sister. My bondmate. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. Cale's jaw clenched. They said she betrayed the crown, that she conspired with enemies. But I knew the truth. She was murdered to keep the bloodline pure. The boy, his voice broke for a fraction of a second, is all that's left of her. Lyria's breath caught. The weight of his confession filled the room like smoke. You're not just his guardian, she whispered. You're his blood. Cale's eyes lifted to hers. I am his uncle. His protector. His curse. Their gazes held, and for the first time, she saw the man behind the armor, the grief, the guilt, the relentless duty that had carved him hollow. The fire burned lower, shadows crawling closer. You and I, he said quietly, are both outcasts of prophecy. Maybe that's why fate forced our paths together. Lyria felt the air shift again, the unspoken connection tightening between them. It wasn't just curiosity or gratitude. It was recognition. Two souls marked by the same fire, walking on the same edge of ruin. The silence stretched until she whispered, and what happens now? Cale's eyes softened, though his voice stayed firm. Now, we find a way to survive what's coming. And if survival isn't an option? He stepped closer, stopping just short of her. The heat from the fire glowed between them, painting his face in shades of gold and shadow. Then we make them remember our names. Her pulse quickened. His scent hit her again, wild, earthy, electric. Her wolf stirred, drawn toward him in a way that made her breath catch. He noticed. His eyes darkened, and for a moment, neither moved. The air hummed. But then the boy shifted in his sleep, breaking the tension. Cale turned away, retreating back into silence, leaving Lyria staring at the fire. The flames flickered higher for a moment, and in them she saw visions, wolves running beneath a blood-red moon, kingdoms burning, and her own reflection, crowned in silver light. She closed her eyes, whispering into the dark, maybe I was never cursed. Maybe I was meant to burn. The fire dimmed, and the night swallowed the sound. Above them, thunder rolled again, distant, warning, inevitable. And deep within the tunnels of the old Colosseum, the prophecy stirred. The mountains welcomed them with silence, the kind that weighed on the soul. Dawn bled faintly over the horizon, staining the snow in shades of pink and ash. Each step crunched beneath their boots as they climbed higher into the forgotten peaks north of the empire, where the air grew thin and the wind whispered like ghosts. The ruins were older than time itself, scattered bones of a civilization long swallowed by ice and memory. Fragments of marble pillars lay buried under drifts of snow, carved with runes that pulsed faintly beneath the frost. The sigil of the Moonborn, a wolf crowned by a bleeding moon, was etched into every stone. Lyria's breath came in shallow clouds. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but something inside her refused to stop. Every instinct screamed that this place was sacred, dangerous, alive. Cale moved ahead, his black cloak snapping in the wind. The boy clung to Lyria's hand, small fingers cold but steady. When they reached the heart of the ruins, a circular clearing framed by broken statues of gods no one remembered, the air changed. It was colder here. Still. Almost reverent. Lyria felt it before she saw it, the pull, deep beneath her ribs, like the earth itself calling her name. Her gaze landed on a monolith half buried in snow. It was smooth, obsidian dark, carved with lines that shimmered faintly like liquid silver. Her hand rose on instinct. Cale caught her wrist before she touched it. "Don't," he warned softly. His voice carried the weight of something old, something fearful. "These stones don't belong to us." Lyria's eyes met his. "Then who do they belong to?" "The dead." She hesitated, but the pull grew stronger, a vibration through her bones that felt less like danger and more like recognition. Slowly, she placed her palm against the stone. The world shattered. Light burst beneath her skin, a searing silver that filled her veins with fire. The air trembled. Snow lifted from the ground in slow spirals, caught in a current unseen. Cale shouted her name, but his voice sounded distant, muffled, as though she were underwater. Visions came like lightning. She saw wolves made of flame and shadow clashing under blood-red skies. She saw temples burning, rivers glowing with moonlight. She saw a woman, cloaked in silver fire, standing on the edge of Rome's great walls, her eyes hollow yet divine. The woman turned toward her. "The cursed shall rise when the moon bleeds over Rome," the voice said, neither whisper nor thunder, but something in between. "And she shall bear the fire that ends kings." The words burned into Lyria's mind. Her body convulsed, and when she fell to her knees, the snow hissed beneath her glowing palms. Cale was beside her instantly, gripping her shoulders. "Lyria. Look at me." Her eyes snapped open, they were no longer brown, but molten silver. The mark of the Moonborn blazed across her skin like living light. Cale stared at her, stunned. "The mark, it's real," he breathed. "The bloodline of the first Alpha, I thought it was just legend." Lyria's breath came in shudders. What did I see?" Cale's jaw clenched. "Prophecy." "I don't want prophecy," she said, voice shaking. "I don't want power or thrones or fate. I just want peace." "Fate doesn't bargain," he said quietly. "It chooses." She looked down at her trembling hands. The glow was fading, but the echo of that voice still pulsed in her chest. "Then why me?" Cale didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight struck the valley below. "Because you survived what should have killed you," he said. "That's how fate marks its own." The boy stirred behind them, rubbing his eyes. "Lyria, why is the snow shining?" She turned to him, her expression softening despite the storm raging inside her. "Because the mountain remembers," she whispered. Cale watched her, really watched her. The fear she carried, the strength she tried to bury beneath it, the spark of something dangerous and divine. He'd seen countless warriors fall to prophecy before, each consumed by the very power they sought. But Lyria, she didn't crave it. She resisted it. That made her unpredictable, and impossibly human. They camped within the ruins that night. Cale built a fire, careful not to disturb the old runes carved into the stones. The flames flickered against the monolith, casting long shadows across the snow. Lyria sat apart, staring at her hands again. The faint traces of silver still glimmered under her skin like veins of light. She flexed her fingers, and the mark pulsed softly, alive. Cale approached quietly. "You haven't eaten," he said, setting a strip of dried meat near her. She shook her head. "It's hard to eat when your body feels like it's made of lightning." He crouched beside her. "You should learn to control it." Her laugh was small, tired. You think I haven't tried? Every time I let it out, someone gets hurt. Kale's expression darkened. Maybe that's because you've only used it in fear. Lyria turned to him sharply. You think I wanted any of this? No, he said simply. But you have it. And running from it won't change that. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried an authority that made her chest tighten. She looked away, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. You sound like one of the elders. I'm nothing like them, he said quietly. They punished what they didn't understand. I've seen what happens when power is denied, it rots. It consumes. Their eyes met again. The silence between them was heavier than words. You think I'm dangerous, she murmured. Kale hesitated, too long. That's what I thought. He exhaled slowly. I think the world will make you dangerous, whether you want it or not. The truth stung because it felt inevitable. Lyria looked toward the monolith again, where faint light still pulsed within the stone. That voice, it said the cursed shall rise. I think it meant me. Kale's brow furrowed. The Moonborn were said to carry both creation and destruction in their blood. They were the bridge between beast and god. But they vanished centuries ago, slaughtered by the very packs that feared them. So the curse lives through me. No, Kale said, his tone low, steady. The fire lives through you. What you do with it decides whether it's curse or salvation. Her throat tightened. You talk like you've carried prophecy yourself. Kale's gaze turned distant. We all do, in some way. The boy stirred again in his sleep, mumbling something soft, and Lyria's expression softened. He doesn't deserve this, she whispered. To grow up with crowns and wars and blood. He should be free. Kale looked at her, his eyes unreadable. Freedom always costs something. She met his gaze. And you'd trade what for yours? He paused, a heartbeat too long. Everything. The fire crackled, and for a moment, the air between them changed, warmer, charged, fragile. Snow began to fall again, flakes catching the firelight like tiny stars. Lyria watched them drift through the open ceiling of the ruin. Do you ever think about what you'd be if you weren't bound to the king? Kale's jaw tightened. That's not something I can afford to imagine. Why? Because imagination is dangerous for men like me. Men like you? Loyal ones, he said. Lyria studied him, the way his armor gleamed faintly beneath his cloak, the faint scar that ran from his temple down to his jaw, a mark of wars fought and lost. You talk like you've already chosen your cage. Kale met her eyes again, and this time, there was no defense in his tone. And you talk like you still believe you can live without one. The words hit harder than she wanted them to. She turned away, staring into the fire again. Her hands were steady now, but the silver still pulsed faintly beneath her skin, reminding her of what she'd seen, wolves made of flame, a woman cloaked in power, a city burning under a bleeding moon. She whispered, almost to herself, the moon bleeds over Rome. Kale's head turned sharply. What did you say? The voice, that's what it said. The cursed shall rise when the moon bleeds over Rome. Kale's expression shifted, eyes narrowing. The next blood moon is in 7 nights. The air grew colder. What happens when it rises? Lyria asked. Kale looked at her, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. If the prophecy is true, it means the balance between wolves and men will break. The silver flame will awaken, and nothing will stop it from burning everything. Lyria swallowed hard. Then I have to stop it. Kale's voice dropped low. You can't stop what's inside you. You can only choose how it ends. The fire hissed as snow melted on the stones. Lyria pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, feeling the weight of those words settle deep into her bones. Above them, the moon rose pale and watchful, a silent witness to their unfolding fate. Kale stood, his silhouette framed against the snow. Get some rest, he said softly. Tomorrow, we find a way through the mountains. If what you saw is real, there are others who'll come for you before the moon does. Lyria's voice came out a whisper. And if they do? Cale turned, his eyes catching the faint silver light from her mark. Then I'll stand between you and the fire. He walked toward the edge of the ruin, disappearing into the shadows. Lyria sat alone for a long time, listening to the wind move through the broken stones. Somewhere deep beneath the mountain, the monolith pulsed once, slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The prophecy wasn't sleeping anymore. It was waking. And whether she wanted it or not, so was she. The flames behind them roared like a living thing, clawing at the sky as if it wanted to follow them. Smoke curled through the dawn air, thick and bitter, painting the horizon in shades of crimson and ash. Cale didn't stop running. His arms were locked tight around her limp body, her head pressed against his chest, her hair heavy with the scent of soot and blood. Every step tore at his lungs, but he kept moving, through the trees, over jagged roots, past the howls of wolves closing in behind them. Lyria's breathing was shallow. Her skin burned hot against his armor, but her pulse fluttered weakly, like a candle fighting against the wind. The silver marks along her wrists glowed faintly beneath the grime. He didn't understand it, no one could have survived channeling that kind of power. But she had. And somehow, she was still holding on. When he reached the ridge, he stopped just long enough to scan the horizon. The soldiers were closing in, torches flickering between the trees. He could hear their shouts, the clang of steel. "Bring her alive," one of them bellowed. Cale's jaw tightened. Alive. They wanted to parade her before the court, to let the king decide what to do with the cursed Omega who had defied prophecy. He knew what that meant. Torture. Execution. A spectacle. He shifted his hold, lowering her gently onto the snow. Her lashes fluttered, her breath catching in the cold air. When she opened her eyes, the silver gleam in them dimmed to gray. "Why, did you help me?" she whispered, her voice raw. He knelt beside her, silent for a moment. The truth tangled in his chest, heavy and bitter. "Because I saw what they didn't," he said finally. "You didn't fight for power, Lyria. You fought for that boy. You fought because no one else would." Her lips trembled. "And now they'll burn for it." Cale didn't answer. The smoke from the village carried the cries of the dying. He wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, but that would have been a lie. The world they lived in didn't forgive those who broke its rules, it punished them until they either bent or broke completely. And yet, looking at her now, pale and trembling, he couldn't bring himself to regret saving her. She sat up slowly, her body weak but her gaze steady. "You think I wanted this?" she asked, her voice low, trembling with anger and sorrow. "I didn't ask to be born with this curse. I just wanted to live quietly, to be left alone." Cale looked away. "There's no peace for people like us." The words hung in the cold air, bitter and final. Snow began to fall again, soft flakes melting on her lashes. The boy stirred beside the fire Cale had built earlier, whimpering in his sleep. Lyria turned her face toward him, something fragile flickering in her expression, tenderness, maybe even guilt. "Does he know?" she asked quietly. Cale shook his head. "No. He doesn't know who he is yet. Or what he means." "Then keep it that way," she murmured. "At least until it's safe." Cale studied her, the way her fingers trembled when she touched the snow, the way her eyes seemed to hold centuries of exhaustion. "Safe doesn't exist anymore," he said softly. A sound cut through the stillness, a low, mournful howl echoing through the forest. Both of them froze. The wolves of Dravenfell were close. Lyria's pulse quickened, her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless, sensing the danger. "They'll find us," she whispered. Cale rose to his feet, drawing his blade. "Then we move again." But before he could take a step, she reached out and caught his wrist. Her grip was weak, but her eyes burned with sudden intensity. "If they catch me, don't let them take me alive," she said. "Promise me." His throat tightened. "Lyria. Promise." He stared at her for a long moment. Snow fell between them, soft and soundless, like the world itself was holding its breath. Finally, he nodded. I promise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, alive, filled with everything neither dared to say. Then Cale sheathed his blade and lifted her again. Hold on, he murmured. We'll reach the river by dawn. She didn't reply, but her head rested against his shoulder, and he could feel her heartbeat steadying against his chest. The night stretched long and merciless. Every sound was a threat, the snap of a twig, the whisper of wind through dead leaves, the distant call of a raven. Cale moved like a shadow through the woods, his instincts sharp, his senses stretched thin. He'd been trained to track, to kill, to survive. But never to protect something, or someone, he didn't understand. When they finally reached the frozen river, he lowered her onto the bank. The boy stirred again, murmuring in his sleep. Lyria reached out and brushed the child's hair from his forehead, her touch gentle, almost maternal. He's just a child, she said softly. All this death, all this hate, and he's caught in the middle. Cale watched her, the glow of the moon reflecting off her skin. You're different from what they say, he said quietly. Her eyes lifted to meet his. And what do they say? That the cursed Omega feels nothing. That her heart was burned away by the moon. A sad smile touched her lips. Then they've never felt what it's like to be burned from the inside and still keep breathing. Something in him shifted then, something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Compassion. Admiration. Maybe even something darker, something that a man like him had no right to feel. He turned away before she could see it. The wolves' howls grew louder. The hunt was close. Lyria felt it deep in her bones, the rhythm of pursuit, the ancient call of predator and prey. Her wolf stirred again, urging her to rise, to fight, to flee. But her body was failing. Every nerve ached, her vision blurred. The power she'd unleashed in the village had drained her to the core. Cale knelt beside her, his hand brushing her shoulder. You can't stay here, he said. The river's frozen. If we cross it, their scent will lose us. She met his gaze, her eyes dim but fierce. And if the ice breaks? He gave a grim smile. Then we pray the gods are kinder than our kind. He helped her to her feet. The river stretched before them like a sheet of pale glass, glittering beneath the moonlight. Every step they took echoed faintly, the sound swallowed by the vast silence of the forest. Behind them, the howls drew closer. Halfway across, the ice groaned. Cracks spread beneath their feet. Lyria's breath hitched. The boy whimpered, clutching Cale's cloak. Don't stop, Cale said. Almost there. The ice splintered. A roar split the night, the lead hunter's wolf form bursting through the trees, eyes gleaming with fury. Lyria turned, her power flickering faintly along her skin. Cale drew his sword and moved between them. The wolf lunged. Steel met flesh. Cale grunted, twisting, his blade sinking deep into the beast's neck. But more shadows emerged, 5, maybe 6. Lyria's heart pounded. She could feel her wolf clawing at her ribs, desperate to rise. Her eyes flared silver again. She stepped forward, trembling, her body weak but her spirit burning. Get behind me, she said hoarsely. Cale hesitated. Lyria. I said go. The air around her shimmered. The silver mark across her chest pulsed with light, brighter, hotter, alive. Her hair whipped around her face as a gust of wind burst from her body. The wolves faltered, snarling, their eyes flickering with confusion. Lyria closed her eyes and let the power surge through her one last time. The earth trembled. The river cracked open. A wave of raw energy burst outward, sending the attackers crashing backward into the trees. When the light faded, Lyria collapsed. Cale caught her just before she hit the ice. She was cold, her breath shallow. The mark on her chest flickered faintly, like dying embers. He held her close, whispering her name, but she didn't respond. For a moment, he thought she was gone. Then her eyes fluttered open, and a faint smile touched her lips. "You didn't promise to save me," she whispered. "Only to not let them take me." Cale's throat tightened. "Don't talk. We're almost safe." But even as he said it, he knew safety was a lie. The world had seen what she could do. It would never stop hunting her now. And somewhere deep inside him, Cale realized something he couldn't admit, not yet. The moment he'd met her, his fate had changed too. The snow kept falling. The night swallowed their tracks. And as the moon bled faintly above the mountains, the prophecy whispered once more, soft, distant, inevitable. "The cursed shall rise when the moon bleeds over Rome." And Lyria, trembling in Cale's arms, had just awakened it. The rain came down like shattered glass, slicing through the night, cold and relentless. It soaked the broken statues that surrounded the old temple, forgotten gods staring blind-eyed into the dark. The air smelled of moss, iron, and old prayers. The forest whispered beyond the crumbling walls, its song both mournful and alive. Inside, the fire flickered weakly. The flames danced across the stone floor, casting long shadows that moved like ghosts. Cale sat by the fire, his armor laid beside him, the wet leather of his cloak steaming in the heat. His hands were steady as he wrapped a strip of linen around Lyria's arm, the cloth already stained with blood and ash. She winced but didn't pull away. Her body ached everywhere, the kind of ache that goes deeper than the flesh, reaching bone and spirit alike. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You could have left me." Cale didn't look at her. "I almost did." The silence between them stretched, taut and sharp. The rain outside filled the gaps their words couldn't reach. Lyria studied him through the wavering light. His jaw was tense, his expression carved from stone. But his hands, those hands that had ended so many lives, moved with care, deliberate and gentle. "You didn't," she said finally. "No," he murmured, tying the bandage tight. "I didn't." When he met her eyes, something unspoken passed between them, something fragile, uncertain, but real. It was the first time in years she'd seen a man look at her without judgment or hunger. There was recognition there, a quiet understanding that unsettled her more than hatred ever had. He sat back, exhaling slowly. "You should rest. We move at first light." Her gaze drifted to the boy sleeping beside the fire, curled up in Cale's cloak. His breathing was soft, peaceful. The world outside was still burning, yet somehow the small corner of it had gone still. "Safe, for now." Lyria's voice trembled. "You said his name earlier." "The king's son." Cale nodded. "Prince, listen." Her eyes widened slightly. "He doesn't know who he is." "He will," Cale said quietly. "When the time is right." Lyria's fingers brushed the edge of the blanket around the boy. "He's just a child. If the king knew where he was, he'd use him," Cale interrupted, his tone low, bitter. "Like he uses everything." The fire cracked, a single spark snapping in the silence. Lyria looked at him then, really looked. The shadows beneath his eyes, the faint scar running along his temple, the weary weight in his voice. "You hate him," she said softly. Cale's jaw clenched. "I serve him." "That's not what I asked." His gaze flicked to hers, sharp, almost warning. But he didn't deny it. He reached for his sword, checking the edge, more to distract himself than out of necessity. The torchlight glinted off the blade's steel. "My sister," he said finally, voice barely above a whisper, "was like you." Lyria froze. "She was marked," he continued. "The moonborn flame. They said she carried the same curse you do. When the king's seers found out, they condemned her. Called her an abomination. I was a boy then. I begged for her life." He paused, staring into the fire, his reflection flickering in its glow. "They burned her in front of the gates." Lyria's breath hitched. The pain in his voice wasn't loud, it was quiet, but raw, stripped bare of any defense. I'm sorry, she whispered. He shook his head. Don't be. That's why I wear this crest. Why I serve the man I despise. Because someday, when he least expects it, I'll put a blade through his heart. The words fell heavy, dark, honest. For a long time, neither spoke. The fire hissed softly as the rain leaked through cracks in the roof, dripping onto the stones. Lyria watched the flames, her thoughts drifting through memory, faces she'd lost, the pack that turned their backs, the mark she never asked for. For years, she'd told herself she didn't need anyone. That solitude was safety. But here, in the silence between their shared wounds, something inside her shifted. She whispered, almost to herself, "You shouldn't trust me." Cale looked up. "Why not?" "Because I don't even trust myself," she said, voice trembling. "Everywhere I go, people die. Villages burn. Maybe the curse they talk about, maybe it's real." Cale stood slowly, crossing the small space between them. The torchlight caught the gold in his eyes, the storm behind them. He crouched before her, close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath. "You're not cursed," he said, his tone low, steady, certain. "You were made powerful, and power terrifies weak men." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. His hand rose, hesitated, then brushed the dirt from her cheek with a touch so gentle it undid something inside her. "I see you," he said quietly. "All of you. The broken parts. The fire. The fear. And I will not let them take you." The word struck deeper than any wound. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like prey. She felt seen. And that terrified her more than the soldiers ever could. "Cale," she began, but her voice caught. He leaned closer, his eyes searching hers. "You don't have to speak." The air between them thickened. Charged, trembling, alive. The fire flickered, its light catching the curve of her throat, the scar along his jaw, the way their breaths tangled. Neither moved. The tension was almost unbearable, too raw, too real. Lyria looked away first. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why?" "Because it sounds like you mean them." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried more sadness than joy. "Maybe I do." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The rain beat harder against the temple walls, a relentless rhythm like a heartbeat echoing through the night. Lyria turned her face toward the flames. "If you stay with me, they'll hunt you too. You'll lose everything." "I already have," Cale said simply. The words landed like a confession. There was no hesitation, no regret, only truth. She looked back at him, searching his face for deception, for something to push against. But there was nothing. Just honesty. Just him. The boy stirred beside the fire, his small voice breaking the spell. "Is it morning?" he murmured sleepily. "Not yet," Lyria said softly. "Go back to sleep, little one." Cale adjusted the cloak around him, his movements protective. The sight of it tugged at something deep within Lyria's chest. For so long she'd carried the weight of the world alone. Now, for the first time, it didn't feel quite as heavy. When the boy settled again, Lyria's voice softened. "What happens when dawn comes?" Cale glanced toward the open archway, where the rain shimmered in the torchlight. "We head east. The forest thins near the Black Hills. If we reach the ruins before nightfall, we can lose them for good." "And after that?" He turned back to her. "After that, we survive." She almost laughed, a small, breathless sound. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he admitted. "But it's all we can do." The wind howled through the temple's broken doorway, carrying with it the scent of pine and danger. Lyria's hand brushed against his as she reached for the torch. The touch lingered, electric, grounding. Neither pulled away. She spoke quietly, almost in a whisper. "You should rest too." He shook his head. "I don't sleep well." "Why?" He hesitated. "Dreams." "About her?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. Lyria leaned back against the cold stone, her body weary but her mind restless. She wanted to close her eyes, but every time she did, she saw flashes, villages burning, chains cutting into her skin, the silver flame consuming everything. Kale's voice broke the quiet. "You're shaking." She opened her eyes. He was closer now, his cloak draped around her shoulders. The scent of rain and smoke clung to him. "I'm fine," she said softly. "You're not," he replied, his tone firm but gentle. "But you will be." For a moment, she wanted to believe him. Lightning flashed through the open arch, illuminating the ruins in a burst of pale blue light. For that heartbeat of time, the world looked frozen, her face tilted toward him, his eyes locked on hers, the sleeping boy between them, and the storm raging beyond. Then the thunder came, shaking the ground beneath them. Lyria exhaled slowly. "Kale." He met her gaze, waiting. "If this ends badly," she said, her voice barely audible, "don't waste your vengeance on my behalf. The world has taken enough from you." His expression hardened, but his eyes softened in the firelight. "You think I fight because of what it took?" he asked quietly. "No. I fight because of what it still could take." The words silenced her. Outside, the rain began to slow, the storm fading into a soft drizzle. The temple sighed in the quiet that followed, ancient stones remembering old prayers. Lyria's eyelids grew heavy. Her body finally surrendered to exhaustion, her breathing evening out. Kale watched her for a long moment, the flicker of the fire painting gold across her skin. He reached out, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. "Rest," he murmured. "Tomorrow will come too soon." She didn't answer. But in the faint rise and fall of her chest, in the peace that softened her features, he found something he hadn't known he was looking for, something like purpose. The boy stirred again, mumbling her name in his sleep. Kale looked toward the doorway, where the first light of dawn began to bleed through the rain. The wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of a howl. It was distant, but it was coming closer. And as Kale turned back to the sleeping Omega, a thought he didn't dare voice tightened in his chest. He'd promised to protect her. But somewhere deep inside, he knew, he wasn't protecting her anymore. He was protecting what she'd awakened in him. The world shattered around her. Light poured through her like a living thing, wild and merciless, flooding every vein with heat that burned and healed in the same breath. The sound of her heartbeat swallowed the screams in the hall, drowned the clash of steel and the shouting of guards. She could no longer see the king, nor Kale's face, only the red glow of her own power bleeding into the air, thick as smoke. Then darkness fell. Stone pressed cold against her palms. The smell of rain and earth filled her lungs. She gasped, coughing, her body trembling as if the light had ripped something from her soul. When her vision steadied, she was no longer in the citadel. The world had shifted. She knelt within the ruins of a forest shrine, the same silver flame that had burst from her now flickering weakly in the cracks of the floor. Her body screamed with exhaustion. Every breath cut sharp in her chest. But the silence was worse. Kale was gone. The boy, gone. Only the echo of his whisper lingered. "Forgive me." The words dug deep, like claws into her heart. She tried to stand but her knees buckled, her palms sinking into wet moss. The air stung her wounds, shallow burns running across her arms where the chains had melted away. Her wolf stirred inside her, restless, half awake. She whispered into the dark, "Why did he let them take me?" Her voice broke. The forest gave no answer. In the distance, thunder rolled. Rain began to fall in thin sheets, washing blood and dirt from her skin. Each drop felt colder than the last, as though the heavens themselves had turned against her. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound, because she had believed him. She had looked into Kale's eyes and seen something she hadn't seen in years, safety. Now, she saw only lies. Lyria stumbled toward the tree line, her bare feet sinking into mud. The world seemed to pulse around her, alive with memory. She could still see the king's face in her mind, how his eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction, how the advisors leaned in, hungry for her destruction. They had known what she was before she did. They had waited for her to reveal herself. She had walked into the lion's den, guided by the one man she thought she could trust. And yet, the whisper wouldn't leave her. Forgive me. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't arrogance. It had been pain. Kale's voice had cracked on those two words. Was it guilt? Regret? A warning? Her chest tightened. No, she couldn't think about that now. The forest wasn't safe. The mark of the moonborn burned faintly on her skin, calling to forces older than kings. She could feel it, something vast and ancient awakening in the soil beneath her. She collapsed near a fallen pillar, curling in on herself. Images tore through her mind in fragments, her pack casting her out, the whip cracking in the market, Kale's hand reaching for her, then the blinding flash of power. She covered her ears, but the voices came anyway, whispers in the old tongue of wolves. Daughter of the flame, the circle has begun. She shivered. No. I don't want this. But destiny didn't care what she wanted. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. The forest dimmed under the weight of rain, and the light from her palms faded to nothing. She lay there, soaked and shivering, staring at the fractured sky through the leaves. Every muscle ached. Her heart felt heavier than her body. That's when she heard it, footsteps. Soft, deliberate, drawing closer. Her breath caught. Her wolf growled low. She pushed herself upright, back against the pillar, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon she didn't have. The footsteps stopped just beyond the tree line. Then, a familiar scent hit her, smoke, steel, and wolf hide. Her pulse stumbled. Kale? Silence. Then he stepped out from the shadows, armor darkened by rain, his face pale and wet, not from the storm, but from the tears he hadn't wiped away. Her chest clenched. He didn't look like the commander who had cut through bandits without blinking. He looked broken. Lyria's voice trembled, equal parts rage and heartbreak. You sold me to them. Kale didn't move. His jaw tightened, his shoulders stiff with shame. If I hadn't brought you, they would have hunted the boy. You would have never made it past the border. She laughed bitterly, but it cracked into a sob. So you traded me instead? He took a step closer. She flinched back. You don't understand what that cord is, he said, voice raw. The king, he fears what he can't control. The moment he saw your mark, there was nothing I could do without condemning us all. Her breath came uneven. You could have warned me. I tried. His eyes met hers, wild, desperate, pleading. Every moment on the road, I wanted to tell you. But they were watching. Always watching. Then you should have let them kill me instead. The words tore out of her before she could stop them. They hit him like a blade. Kale didn't argue. He just stood there, dripping, shaking, his silence heavier than any defense. The forest crackled faintly around them, the same strange energy she'd felt earlier now pulsing in the roots. It was responding to her pain. She felt it rising again, the silver flame stirring in her blood, whispering vengeance. Lyria, he said quietly, please. Don't let it take you. She glared at him through tears. Why shouldn't I? They called me cursed. They chained me, beat me, tried to burn me alive. And you handed me to them. His hands balled into fists. Because I had to choose between saving one life or 100. The king would have razed that village if he thought you'd taken the boy. I couldn't risk it. Don't you dare justify betrayal as mercy. The flame flared between them, soft at first, then blinding. The trees around them groaned as the air thickened with power. Kale stumbled back, shielding his eyes, but didn't run. I am not your enemy, he shouted. I came back for you. She shook her head. Too late. Then, suddenly, the boy's voice pierced the storm. Both froze. He ran out from the shadows behind Kale, barefoot, clutching something close to his chest, a broken amulet, glowing faintly blue. Lyria's heart stopped. No, you shouldn't be here. The boy looked at her with tears streaking his cheeks. They said you died. They said you were the monster. Her knees almost gave way. Who told you that? The king. His voice quivered. He said you stole his heir's gift. That you were the reason my mother's gone. Kale closed his eyes, his jaw trembling. Lyria stared at the boy, her throat tight with grief. She could see it now, the same golden eyes, the same aura of strength. The king's blood ran in his veins. She whispered, I saved you. That's all I ever did. The boy hesitated, then clutched the amulet tighter. I know. Kale stepped forward. We have to move. The king's scouts will be here soon. He wants her alive, but only long enough to break her. Lyria turned away. I don't need your protection. You think this is about protection? His voice hardened. It's about survival. You carry the mark that can end him. That's why he'll never stop coming. The word end hung between them like a curse. She looked at her palms, at the faint glow that refused to die, even through her fear. You mean the prophecy? Kale nodded slowly. The moon bleeds soon. When it does, he'll use the boy's blood to bind his power. Unless someone stops him. Lyria stared at the child, so small, trembling, caught between worlds. Her rage faded into something quieter. He's just a boy. He doesn't deserve any of this. Kale's gaze softened. Neither did you. Silence stretched. The storm eased, leaving only the soft drip of water from the leaves. Finally, she exhaled. If I come with you, what happens next? His answer came without hesitation. We burn the throne to ash. Her heart jolted. The man she once called traitor now stood before her like a soldier turned rebel, willing to die for the truth. But could she trust him again? Could she let herself believe him, after everything? Her wolf stirred, restless, sensing something deeper, an old connection, written in blood and fate. She met his eyes. If you lie to me again, Kale, I'll finish what I started in that hall. He nodded once. Then we understand each other. The boy slipped his hand into hers. His small fingers were cold, but his trust was warm, a flicker of light in the ruins of her faith. Lyria looked toward the horizon. The storm clouds had begun to part, revealing a sliver of pale moonlight breaking through. The world felt fragile again, balanced on the edge of something immense. And in that quiet, between betrayal and rebirth, Lyria made her choice. No more running. No more silence. She would return to the capital, not as the cursed Omega they tried to destroy, but as the flame they couldn't control. As she and Kale disappeared into the forest, the amulet in the boy's hand pulsed once more, its light sinking with the mark on her skin. Far away, in the citadel's highest tower, the king looked up at the same moon and smiled. He could feel her awakening. And so could the gods. The prophecy had begun to move. And for the first time since the dawn of the moonborn, the balance of power trembled. The first thing she feels is silence. Not peace, silence. Heavy, unnatural, the kind that comes after something sacred has broken. When Lyria opens her eyes, the world has changed. The ruins of the moonborn temple sprawl around her in pieces, ancient stone split open, the sigils of her ancestors glowing faintly in the cracks like veins of living light. The air hums. The sky burns crimson, streaked with ash and fire. Her hands are no longer hands. They shimmer, half flesh, half silver flame. Power drips from her fingertips like liquid moonlight. Every breath tastes like smoke and blood. The ground beneath her vibrates, answering her heartbeat. Below the mountains, the valley roars with chaos. Wolves, hundreds of them, tearing through men, banners, armor, and steel. The scent of burning fur and human fear hangs thick in the wind. The war she'd tried so hard to avoid has already begun. Lyria staggers to her feet. The silver mark across her chest pulses, alive. Every pulse is a memory, her exile, her shame, her defiance, burning away what's left of who she was. She's not the hunted anymore. The air shifts. A voice moves through it, not one voice, but many. Layered. Ageless. The echoes of the moonborn. You are not the cursed one, they whisper. You are the cure. The words hit something deep inside her. She grips her chest, trembling. The shame she'd carried for years unravels like thread, replaced by something fierce, something that feels like belonging. She steps into the open air, wind whipping through her hair, flames trailing her shadow. Her wolf howls within her, no longer caged, no longer afraid. The battlefield stretches out like a living nightmare, men and beasts locked in war, blades flashing under the red sky. And in the center, the king's army advances, golden banners glinting through smoke. At their front, Kale. He rides hard, his armor cracked and bloodied, his face a war between duty and guilt. His gaze sweeps the ridge, and stops. He sees her. For a moment, time folds. The battlefield noise fades, the world narrows to two people standing on opposite sides of everything they once were. Her heart twists. She remembers his whisper, "Forgive me." But forgiveness feels too small for what she's become. She steps forward. The ground quakes beneath her feet. The silver flames rise higher with each breath, bending to her will, not her fear. Below, soldiers freeze. Some drop their weapons. Others kneel, whispering prayers. The king himself watches from his chariot, a figure draped in black and gold, eyes burning with fury and disbelief. His voice cuts through the storm. Witch. Lyria meets his gaze. No, she says softly. Her voice carries across the valley, clear and resonant. I am not your witch. She lifts her hand. The air shatters. Flames surge outward, a wall of light rolling through the battlefield like a living tide. It doesn't burn the innocent, only the ones marked by cruelty. The corrupt howl as their armor melts and their blades dissolve to ash. Wolves scatter, retreating from the force that feels divine. Kale watches, frozen. She moves like something out of myth, half woman, half storm, her every motion balanced between fury and grace. The flame curls around her without consuming her, as though it recognizes her as its origin. He whispers her name like a prayer. Then the king signals his guards. Archers raise their bows, arrows glowing with spell fire. Kale shouts for them to stop, but the volley releases before he can reach them. Hundreds of arrows slice the air. Lyria doesn't flinch. Her eyes flash silver, and the wind answers. The arrows freeze midair, suspended, trembling, before spinning back toward the sky, exploding in a storm of light. The shockwave throws soldiers to the ground. When the smoke clears, she stands untouched. Kale rides forward, desperate, his voice raw. Lyria. You'll kill yourself. She doesn't look at him. Then I'll die free. The king laughs from his chariot, cold and cruel. You think freedom comes from fire? You think prophecy makes you more than what you are? He draws his blade, the sword of the ancients, forged from the bones of the first Alpha. Its edge glows black. Power belongs to those who command it. He charges. Kale's eyes widen. He moves without thinking, dismounting, sprinting across the field, but he's too far. The king's blade arcs toward Lyria's throat. The moment stretches thin, silent. Then, a clash of light. Silver against black. Lyria's hand catches the blade mid-swing. The metal hisses, melting between her fingers. The shock knocks her back, but she doesn't fall. The king snarls. You were born to die for us, Omega. Her voice trembles, not with fear, but rage. I was born to end you. Flames erupt from her palms, engulfing his sword. The fire climbs his arm, devouring armor and flesh. He screams, not as a king, but as a man stripped of everything divine. Kale reaches them just as the flames rise higher. He grabs her shoulder. Lyria, stop. You'll destroy yourself. Her eyes glisten, sorrow, fury, love, all at once. Then let me burn for something that matters. He shakes his head, desperate. No. You are not their sacrifice. Those words, the same ones the ancestors whispered, cut through the chaos like a blade of truth. She stares at him, the fire in her dimming just slightly. The boy's cry pierces the noise, a small, terrified voice calling her name from the ridge. Her heart jolts. She turns. He stands there, clutching the broken amulet, tears streaking through the ash on his face. The moonlight breaks through the crimson clouds above him, bathing him in pale silver. The child of the crown. The heir of Dravenfell. The symbol of everything they fought to protect. The king lunges again, roaring, using the distraction to strike. But Cale moves faster. His blade meets his monarch's chest with one clean motion. The sound is soft, almost tender. A gasp, then silence. The king's eyes widen, disbelief flickering before they fade to emptiness. Cale holds him upright for a moment, whispering something Lyria can't hear. Then he lets go. The king falls to the ground, his crown rolling through the dirt, catching the last light of the dying sun. The battlefield freezes. Lyria stands amid smoke and ruin, silver fire curling around her like wings. Every soldier stares. Some kneel. Others flee. The boy runs to her, throwing his arms around her waist, trembling. She sinks to her knees, holding him close, her eyes burning with tears she doesn't bother to hide. Cale drops his sword, breathing hard. The blood on his hands gleams dark under the red sky. Lyria looks at him, and for the first time, there's no anger in her gaze, only understanding. She rises slowly, the boy still clinging to her. The moon climbs higher, full and heavy, its light spilling across the valley. The crimson fades to silver. The voice of the ancestors returns, low and vast, woven into the wind. You are not the cursed one. Lyria's eyes close. The words flow through her, binding fire to purpose, grief to strength. When she opens them again, the flames no longer burn. They breathe. Her voice carries, steady and clear. I am not your sacrifice. The power answers. It doesn't roar or rage, it settles. Every flicker of silver light bends to her will. It moves when she breathes, listens when she speaks. The storm obeys her heartbeat. The world stills. Wolves across the field bow their heads. The surviving soldiers drop to their knees, murmuring her name. Cale watches in silence, chest heaving, eyes wet. He takes one hesitant step toward her. She doesn't move away this time. Their eyes meet, and in that quiet, she sees it all, his guilt, his devotion, his surrender. He had betrayed her once, but now he kneels before her, blade lowered, crown abandoned. He whispers, "What are you now?" Her answer is a whisper wrapped in power. What I was always meant to be. The moonlight sharpens, casting her in a halo of silver flame. She stands tall, every scar on her skin glowing faintly, no longer marks of pain but symbols of survival. I am Alpha of the Moonborn, she says. I am the flame that will not bow. The boy clings tighter to her hand. Cale lowers his head, a vow unspoken in the gesture. Around them, the valley exhales, wolves howling in unison, not in rage, but reverence. The echo rolls across mountains, through ruins, through the heart of the fallen citadel. The war has ended, but something greater has begun. Lyria turns her gaze toward the horizon, where smoke meets dawn, where kingdoms tremble, where fate waits for her next move. She knows there will be no peace easily won. The world will not forgive a woman who rose from chains to command flame. But she doesn't need forgiveness anymore. She needs purpose. The wind curls around her, soft, whispering her name like prayer and prophecy intertwined. Lyria of the Silver Moon. No longer outcast. No longer prey. The first true Alpha reborn. And under that bleeding moon, she claims the world not as vengeance, but as justice. Her voice carries one last time through the smoke, calm and certain. I am not your curse. I am your reckoning. The flames bow. The night listens. And destiny, at last, bows back. Silence follows the storm. Smoke curls over the fallen city. The once golden banners lie in tatters, soaked in rain and blood. The world that had bowed to a crown now bows to a girl born in chains. Lyria stands in the heart of it all, her silver light dimming, her breath slow and unsteady. The glow that had once filled her veins fades to a dull shimmer beneath her skin. Her fingers tremble, not from weakness, but from the unbearable stillness that follows power unleashed. Every sound feels wrong in the quiet. The crackle of dying fires. The faint sob of a soldier. The hiss of cooling steel against stone. She doesn't speak at first. She can't. The fire within her, the same force that leveled armies, now feels like a wound she doesn't know how to close. The people stare, some kneeling in reverence, others stepping back in fear, as if the air itself still carries her wrath. Their eyes flicker between awe and terror, love and loathing. She sees it all. She feels it like knives under her skin. Kale stands among them, his armor cracked, his hand still bleeding from the blade that ended his king. He tries to meet her gaze, but can't. The weight of what he's done, what she's become, hangs between them like a veil neither knows how to lift. The boy clutches Lyria's hand, small fingers gripping her with desperate trust. His tears cut clean lines through the soot on his cheeks. She looks down at him, and something softens in her chest. He doesn't see a monster. He sees the woman who saved him. Her voice breaks the silence, fragile yet carrying through the ruins. If I was born to destroy, she whispers, why do I feel peace for the first time? The words fall heavy. No one answers. Even the wind has gone still, as if the world itself is afraid to speak her truth aloud. Ash drifts around her like snow. She closes her eyes and feels the weight of it, each grain a memory, a cost, a name that will never be spoken again. She feels Kale's eyes on her. She knows the war inside him hasn't ended. He wants to go to her. To touch her. To tell her that she is more than the fire that nearly consumed them all. But something holds him back, the fear that if he reaches her now, she might vanish into smoke. He takes a hesitant step forward, the sound of his boots echoing through the ruin. Lyria. Her name leaves his lips like a confession, like a wound reopening. She turns slowly, her expression unreadable, the moonlight catching on the silver traces that still mark her skin. Her eyes find his, and for the first time since the flames rose, there's no rage left, only exhaustion. Don't, she says softly. Don't say my name like it still belongs to you. He stops. The words cut, not with cruelty, but with the weight of truth. I never wanted this, he says, his voice breaking. Not the war, not the crown. Not your pain. But you let it happen. Her tone doesn't rise, it doesn't need to. It carries everything, the betrayal, the loss, the love that still refuses to die. I thought I could protect you, he says. Her eyes glimmer faintly. You thought you could own me. The silence stretches. The boy looks between them, confused, frightened by the tension he doesn't understand. Lyria squeezes his hand, grounding herself in his presence. Kale's shoulders sag. He's seen her power. He's seen her mercy. And yet, standing before her now, he realizes how fragile she still looks beneath the ashen light. A goddess built from heartbreak. He whispers, what happens now? She glances at the sky, where dawn bleeds through the smoke, painting the world in muted gold. Now, she says quietly. Now we see if they follow me because they believe, or because they're afraid. Her gaze drifts across the people watching her. Some kneel lower. Others avoid her eyes. The division is clear, faith and fear, side by side, waiting for her next move. And for the first time, she feels the chill of leadership, not glory, not victory, but the suffocating truth that power isolates more than it liberates. She had dreamed of freedom her whole life. Now she has it, and it feels like exile. Kale steps closer, his voice low. You can't stay here. They'll never see you as one of them again. She meets his gaze. Then I'll stop trying to be. Something flickers between them, an understanding, sharp and painful. Whatever they were before died with the king. What remains is something raw, undefined. The boy tugs at her hand, whispering, Lyria, they're scared. Her eyes soften. She kneels, brushing soot from his face. So am I. He looks at her with wide, unwavering trust. But you're the light. The words cut deeper than any blade. She doesn't know if she deserves them, but she holds them close. Because in a world that's burned down to ash, a child's belief is the only thing left untouched. The air shifts. Wolves emerge from the mist, her wolves. Silent, eyes glowing faintly in the dawn. They circle the ruins, waiting for her command. No growls. No movement. Just presence. They wait for their alpha. She rises slowly. The silver mark on her skin flares once more, faint but steady. The people watch as the wolves bow their heads. The message is clear. The era of kings is over. Lyria doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. The fire has taken what it must, she says. What's left is ours to rebuild. The words ripple through the crowd, hope and fear tangled together. Kale looks at her one last time, his expression hollow. And me? Her silence is the answer. He nods once, jaw tight, and steps back. The distance between them becomes a line that neither dares cross. The boy presses against her leg, trembling. She places a hand on his shoulder, steady but gentle. For a heartbeat, the world feels suspended. The storm has ended, but its echo lingers in every soul, every heartbeat. She turns her eyes to the horizon. The dawn rises, slow and reluctant, painting the shattered stones in light. The city looks almost beautiful in ruin, fragile, honest. Her heart aches, but beneath the ache, there's calm. For the first time, peace doesn't feel like surrender. It feels earned. Her voice breaks the silence, soft as wind, yet it carries everywhere. If I was born to destroy, she says again, then maybe destruction was just the beginning. The people watch her, unsure whether to cheer or pray. Kale lowers his head. The boy squeezes her hand tighter. And then the wind moves through the ruins, gentle, almost tender, lifting the ash, the scent of rain, the echo of something ancient. Would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Would you see salvation in her fire, or damnation in her mercy? When power is born from pain, can love survive it? Is she a savior, or a flame that will consume us all? If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn. And hearts that refuse to die. Dawn spills across the ruined valley, cold and slow, its light struggling to reach through the remnants of smoke still coiling above the battlefield. The fires have gone out, leaving only the scent of ash, iron, and something older, something that hums beneath the bones of the earth. The world breathes again, but it is not the same world that slept the night before. From the cliffs overlooking the silent field, a figure stands unmoving, a woman cloaked in black wolf fur, her silhouette carved against the bleeding sky. Her eyes burn crimson, faintly luminous beneath the morning haze. The wind teases strands of her dark hair across her face, and she does not blink, not once, as she watches the silver-haired wolf below rise from the ruin she created. Her lips curl into the ghost of a smile. So, she whispers, her voice carrying just enough for the mountains to hear, it begins again. The wolves in the shadows around her, black-furred, silent, eyes glowing like coals, shift uneasily. They feel her hunger ripple through the air like heat before a blaze. Her gaze never leaves Lyria. She is not the only one, she murmurs. The words slide into the wind, vanish, and yet the valley seems to shiver at their echo. Far below, Lyria stands at the heart of the ruin. Her people gather behind her, rebuilding fires, tending the wounded, whispering prayers not to gods, but to her name. She feels the weight of it, the pull of leadership, the ache of survival, the heavy hum of destiny that refuses to release her. The boy sits near the broken steps, playing with stones, whispering small stories to himself. He smiles every now and then, as if the world hasn't just ended. Lyria closes her eyes. She feels the pulse of her power still flickering beneath her ribs, quiet but alive. She can taste the calm after chaos, that fragile stillness before the world decides what comes next. Kale stands at a distance. He has not spoken since she claimed the flames, since she rose as something neither of them fully understands. His silence is an apology, and she accepts it without words. They are both ghosts of what they were, bound not by love now, but by what love cost them. The wind changes. Lyria's wolf senses it before her human mind does. Something watching. Something ancient. Her eyes lift toward the ridges beyond the city's edge, the place where shadows cling even after dawn. The silver inside her stirs, restless. She sees nothing. But she feels everything. The pulse. The faint tremor. The quiet warning. The mountain answers with a single howl, distant, low, and not of her kind. A sound that crawls beneath her skin and whispers of something older than prophecy. She turns slowly, scanning the ridge. The horizon stares back, empty. Yet the air tastes of promise and blood. Kale senses it too. He steps forward, his voice low. "You felt that?" Her reply is soft, almost prayerful. "The world is not done with us." He watches her profile in the light, strong, still, but shadowed by something heavy and unspoken. "Then we prepare." She shakes her head. "No. We learn. The world has fought too long. It's time to understand what hunts us." The boy runs to her side, slipping his hand into hers. "Was that a bad wolf?" Lyria kneels, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "No," she says quietly. "It was a warning." High above, the woman in black watches the scene unfold, lips still curved in that cruel, knowing smile. She traces a line in the air with one gloved finger, and the mist around her trembles, forming the shape of a sigil, a moon fractured into 3 parts. The symbol glows briefly red, then fades. The wolves beside her bow their heads. "Let her believe she's free," she whispers. "Let her believe she's won." The wind answers with another howl, distant, layered, multiplied. More than one voice. Dozens. Hundreds. The sound rolls across the mountains, carried like thunder before a storm. Lyria feels it in her bones, the rhythm of footsteps not yet here, the weight of power not yet claimed. She straightens slowly, her hand tightening around the boy's. "Kale," she says, her voice low, "tell them to stay close tonight." He frowns. "You think they'll come this soon?" "I don't think," she says. "I know." The words hang in the air, final, resolute. Kale turns, shouting orders to the others, his voice steady but his eyes uneasy. The wolves obey instantly, forming protective circles around the survivors. The scent of ash is replaced by tension, electric and cold. Night doesn't fall yet, but the light weakens, dawn paling into something uncertain. Lyria looks at the horizon once more, the same place she'd seen her freedom born. Now, she feels the first whisper of chains returning. The moonborn blood hums within her. The prophecy still echoes. The cursed shall rise when the moon bleeds over Rome. She thought she had fulfilled it. But perhaps she was only the first note in a longer song. A tremor runs through the ground, faint but undeniable. The boy gasps, clutching her cloak. Lyria's wolf rises within, silver eyes flashing, not in fear, but readiness. "Come then," she murmurs to the unseen. "If there's more to take, let it come for me." The mountains answer not with words, but with sound, deep, old, and resonant. The hell this time is not singular. It carries harmony. Command. Invitation. Kale's voice trembles slightly as he looks to her. "How many?" Her eyes flick toward the dark ridge, where the faint shimmer of red eyes begins to pierce through the mist. "Too many to count." She takes a step forward, unarmed, unafraid. Her power hums at her fingertips, responding to her heartbeat. The ground around her glows faintly silver. But something new lingers in the air, a scent that doesn't belong to wolves or fire. A scent of decay and memory. Kale draws his blade. They shouldn't exist. They don't, she says softly. Not yet. The boy hides behind her. The air thickens, heavy with unseen motion. From the mist, shapes begin to form, wolves, yes, but larger, their eyes hollow, their fur black as the void. They move like shadows stitched into flesh. Not living. Not dead. Lyria stares at them, her pulse steady. The woman's voice echoes faintly across the valley. You are not the end, Silver Flame. You are the door. The creatures halt just beyond the boundary of light. Watching. Waiting. Kale steps closer to Lyria, his hand brushing hers, an instinct, not a plan. She feels the warmth of him, real and grounding amid the cold. If this is another war, he starts. She interrupts softly. Then we fight it differently. The woman in black smiles from the cliffs. Oh, you will, she murmurs, her crimson eyes gleaming. You will burn the world in ways the first fire never could. The wind whips her cloak, and when it settles, she is gone. Only her laughter lingers, a sound too soft to be human. Lyria stands motionless, her gaze fixed on the empty ridge. She knows that voice. She doesn't know how, but her soul remembers. Kale follows her stare. Who was that? She whispers the name that rises unbidden from the depths of her memory. The Blood Alpha. The words taste like iron on her tongue. Kale goes still. A myth. Not anymore. The black wolves retreat into the fog, but their presence lingers, an omen, not a victory. The sun finally breaks over the ridge, pale and distant. The golden light touches the ruins, glints off armor, and fades against the lingering silver glow around Lyria's skin. Kale lowers his sword. The boy looks up at her with wide eyes, trusting still. Lyria looks to the east, toward the shadowed lands beyond the mountains, the place where legends sleep and nightmares wake. Her voice, when she speaks, carries not fear, but something sharper. Resolve. This isn't over, she says. It's only beginning.